Hello everybody and good afternoon. Welcome to SkyLines Festival of Poetry and Spoken Word in Coventry. I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming you to another event as part of 2022's festival here in Coventry. I'm Commane, and the festival, SkyLines, is a co-production between Nine Arches Press and Writing West Midlands. It is funded by Arts Council England and supported by the Belgrade Theatre. The event that you're joining us for, in person, hello lovely people, and online, hello to you all as watching from home as well on our live stream. It's lovely to have you all here. The event that you're all here for is the wonderful launch of Primers Volume 6, selected by Rishi Dastidar and featuring the poets Kym Deyn, Estelle and Fathima Zahra. And we are really delighted to be showcasing these brilliant new poets today here at SkyLines. To tell you a little bit about Primers, and then I will invite up Rishi, who will be introducing each one of the poets and talking a little bit about the anthology and about their work. In 2021, we launched the 6th edition of our nationwide mentoring scheme, Primers. The scheme searches for exciting new voices in poetry. Rishi Dastidar was our editor, and I was also working with Rishi as a selecting editor as well. And after reading through the hundreds and hundreds of anonymous entries, we narrowed down our choices from longlist to a shortlist of 10, and then to a final 3 poets, Kym Deyn, Estelle and Fathima Zahra. You'll hear them all read in just a moment. Primers Volume 6 brings together a showcase from each of the 3 poets. Their work is startling, original, and packed with flair. They explore everything from magic and mourning, cross-examinations of power and patriarchy, to the intimate secrets and parent cuts of growing up. These are poems of beginning and becoming, of difference and defiance, of other worlds, hard lessons, leaps of faith. Primers is proud to present these bold and dynamic poems from contemporary poetry's 3 of contemporary poetry's most exciting new voices. Will you please welcome my fellow editor, Rishi Dastidar.
Thank you, Jane, and good afternoon, everyone here, and good afternoon, everyone down the line. This was pure pleasure, frankly. When you get to read brilliant new work and you get to then work with brilliant new poets and make what's already wonderful poems even better. I'm going to try not to say too much about the poets and the work because, frankly, the work speaks for itself and you'll be charmed and enraptured in to wild degrees. So let me introduce them. And we're starting with Kym Deyn. Kym is a poet, playwright, and fortune teller. They have a legitimate snack forthcoming with Broken Sleep Books, as well as working Carcanet's Brotherton Poetry Prize Anthology. Otherwise, they have been widely published in a range of anthologies and journals, including Butcher's Dog and the Valley Press Anthology of Prose Poetry. They are one of the winners of the 2020 Outspoken Prize for Poetry. And my initial sensation on seeing Kym's work was, wow, I have no idea what's going on here in the best possible way. And I've said in the foreword that these are poems of magic and mourning, and where conversations with fairy children, bog bodies, and those who've crossed over into the spirit world are standard, where reality is hazy in the best possible way summer evenings are, and where enchantment isn't a possibility but a command, and the past and the present and the now and the afterlife meet in Kym's poems. They're audacious, they're bold, you'll love them. Please give it up for Kym Deyn.
Hello. Oh my God, it's such a privilege to be here. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Jane and Rishi for working with me on these poems. It's just been such a fantastic experience. I'm going to read some work from Primers, and when I was writing these poems, I was thinking a lot about impossible worlds and whether or not we could use poetry to go to strange places and talk to the dead, as Rishi said. So this first one is a guide for passage into St. Martin's Land, and St. Martin's Land is a kind of fairy place. In the 12th century, 2 green children, a brother and sister, were found outside the Sussex village of Woolpit. They spoke a strange language and no one knew what to make of them. The girl survived and her colour eventually faded, and she eventually learned English, and when they asked her where she came from, she said she'd come from St. Martin's Land. So this is a guide for passage into St. Martin's Land. 1. Find a paper map, earth splayed like cut fruit. Turn it over. Here is the blank page, impossible task, fictitious geography. 2. Then walk backwards using your compass as a pendulum. 3. Stand in doorways with your foot in a bucket of water. 4. Split your face like Janus. 5. Fall laughing backwards over the edge of a cliff. 6. Wear a hagstone like a monocle. 7. Stand on the beach at twilight, threshold of day and night, land and sea. 8. Ask yourself if the sea and sky can swap places. If there are endless possible reflections in mirrors, if the horizon is a line you can dance on, if the moon is hung in the sky with string, if your laughter is a ticker tape parade, if there's magic, if there's magic, if there's magic, if there's magic. 8a. If there's magic, can you step off the underside of the map and arrive all at once? Thank you. And then I wrote a series of poems about the green children. I found them totally fascinating, and this is the last one in the sequence. It's from Agnes's point of view, the girl, the sister, and it's called Babes in the Wood. How am I supposed to survive in this dead land, where the light bleaches us like driftwood, where the churches announce the hour without you? You were too green, too much an oddity, a small boy. I understand that this land couldn't keep you, that it moved too quickly, the light too bright, the smoke too dark. Your small body fading into bones they couldn't deny the greenness of. If their God doesn't want you, I'll keep you, tucked into my armpits like a small green ghost. Once upon a time, 2 children were crying in a wolf pit. How were they to know that they had come into a world without belonging in it? I suppose I'm still pretending I'll find you. On my way home, curled up in a peony, tucked into the undergrowth, please, a glen, a glade, a valley, a crossroads, anywhere the dead might take my hand so this bright world doesn't burn. You're my only one to remember home with, the only one who knows our mother's whistling songs. Thank you. And then I'm going to go from the green children of Woolpit to a sort of little potted history of my own family, and this is genealogy for spiritualists. My ancestors, matryoshked inside of me, are marveling. Robert, how do I reach you? In 1855, you wrote, "When I am dead and in my grave and all my bones are rotten, take up this book and in it look that I am not forgotten. Grace in the bloodline fizzing like champagne, electric angels down the chimney. Years ago, great-grandmother saw ball lightning float through her living room, past the eggshell teacups with their astonished geishas, past Aunt Violet screaming, past us, forever blue, marked. Mother lets the dead cat purr around her feet. Mother meets God in her dreams, has a boyfriend possessed by the devil. Mother was famous for being the first bottle blonde in Teesside. Once, she taught me to lie. I was 7. You're too honest, she said, so lie to me until I believe it. Nana, rising like Christ, her footsteps on the stairwell all slipper-shuffle. So real we could call to her and did. Those mornings, she did the Lord one better. Came back twice, her ghost. I was born with 1 foot backwards, already walking the backwards paths of the dead. Spiritualist doctrine holds the dead age. The soul rewilds itself. I tell you this because when I met my brother for the first time, he stood taller than me. When my mother was much younger than I am now, and my brother's cancer etched him like a fresh copper plate, she rushed home, passing herself on the way. I like to think it was me she missed, arriving from another time to catch them. I ought to say my nana named everyone for her sister's dead children, each sibling already a ghost. This is the smallest branch of the tree. It blooms roses in winter, sweats amber, knows what the devil calls himself. On the day I ask where my brother is buried, I will bring him a spade. Thank you. Got just a couple more, and then I'll pass on to another brilliant poet. Make sure yes, there we go. Making sure I'm reading the right ones. This next one, I love an extravagant title, so this next one is called An Introduction to Palmistry for Someone Seeing Their Hands for the First Time. 1. Gods can't wear watches, and they can't know how badly timed they all are, but I digress. If you speak softly to the bodies of the dead, speak to them like the marsh tide rising up and down with the rain, they will extend their specimen hands, touch their lips, lingering scent of earth and sphagnum moss, apologize for waking them. Ever want to escape from yourself? 2. I meet my brother on the way home, and his name is a valley for those that didn't make it out of their childhood. I think of my heartline and the airless acidity of the marsh and how I can't do anything for either of us. I confess to a bog body preserved behind museum glass that I'm afraid. I'm still looking to my palms for advice on growing up alone. And I'll read the final poem in the collection, which I think links us back round, because I love doing that. It's called As Above, So Below. The bog's backwards witchland holds unknown anatomies, as many as a length of string is long, as unreachable as time's thick molasses, peat swimmers, moss-carned, holy red lands. Here is the underland. Time is an unseeing eye, carved Baltic amber. Here in the below places where red bodies open their mouths to speak, the wool-wrapped boy offering, the mislaid king, the horizon a suspended anchor, body mid-air. All time is no time. A body is here yesterday and 100 years. A body here is no body. It breathes the amniotic of the bog. The world tipped upside, the sky root-speckled, a body occupied in multitudes, living spirit, lichen home, a place extending the aged branches of itself. Here the water is a song the land is singing. O harvest, O thinnest of days, come to this land, these lost days, come to this fairy place. The hags are young again, spinning the first story. The first magic is falling up into a backward sky. Thank you very much.
Like I said, magic. Next, Estelle Price. And Welsh speakers out there, forgive me, but I'm going to butcher a pronunciation. Estelle Price lives in Cheshire, but can often be found on the Llyn Peninsula. No, she wasn't going for that. Close to the sea. Estelle is the winner of the 2021 Welsh Poetry Competition and the 2018 Book of Kells Writing Competition. She writes from a feminist perspective on a range of themes, including her East End past, the body, and the Bloomsbury Group. Her poetry has been placed or listed in the National, Bridport Welshpool, London Magazine, Much Wenlock, Canterbury Verve, and other competitions. Poems have left home for Poetry Wales, Cranog, Marble Poetry, 14 Lines, Alchemy Spoon, and the Stony Thursday Book. Before she knew she was a poet, she was a lawyer, classicist, and charity worker. And that mention of Estelle's various pasts is apposite because they provide some lovely grounding and textures and backdrops for her work, which we've described as dexterous in the foreword. And it's work that's driven by a keen ear, and it's fastidious, and it sculpts memory and experience and language into a series of compelling moments that examine power and status under patriarchy. And I think, that clarity was one of the things that really called out to us. And I'm aware that makes the poem sound dry, but far from it. There's a very easy and pleasing intimacy here, and which allows the poems to slip into a variety of forms which reflect the momentum of the narratives that are being conjured up here as well. Please welcome Estelle.
What a pleasure it is to be here. How happy I am. I've been writing poetry since 2014, and the poems in Primers 6 are representative of the themes and concerns that I engage with in my work. It's been a difficult process deciding which poems to read today. I had a chat with them, asked if they would choose for me, but that led to the bossiest poems pushing to the front. So I've overruled, chosen poems with a hint of a linear narrative, beginning with the first one, Behind Closed Doors. None of us ever knew how it began, which word or act would be the kindling that coaxed the embers that never quite extinguished back into flame. For a day or so, the house could ignore the heat. The threat to its joists and floorboards could pretend the fire was manageable and would stay contained in the throat where it was lit. Always a shift came when the smoky air thickened, changed colour, and the beginning gave way to the middle. In the middle, two girls sat on a narrow staircase in cotton nightdresses, plaiting and replaiting each other's hair, neither up nor down, wanting their mother. In the middle, the walls turned inside out to get away from the noise, and doors slammed themselves to draw attention to their distress. Unlike the beginning, the middle was determinate. There was always a stone floor. The fire was too scared to cross, although the two girls on the stairs did not know this. By the news at 10, the end was reached, as if the bells of Big Ben demanded it, so sudden that the house did not have time to rearrange itself. So sudden, the fire was forced to sink to its knees. Like the beginning, the end of the end was unknown, except that it was preceded by silence, forked through with blame, and shoved into the stair cupboard to make space for the next beginning. When I write, I think of what appears on the page as a chorus of voices, even if the poem uses the I pronoun. Some poems feel more acutely autobiographical than others, but many have gathered the experiences, loves, hopes, horrors of women I have known. It's true, I never think of my I as anything other than female, with female concerns. This next poem is one of the more autobiographical. The Oxford Interview. I'm in a wood-panelled room with two dons. They are asking a question. It starts like this. A man boards a train. By mistake, he leaves behind his umbrella in the waiting room. They don't say what kind of umbrella. Let's assume it's a special one. Let's give it a silver-topped parrot head bought from an umbrella shop on High Holborn. They continue. He leaves the umbrella leaning against a seat. How careless. His wife will be angry. I'm making that bit up. To be clear, it's only the skeleton of the story the dons give me. Very soon, another man comes along. Definitely a thin man. I can see his ribs. He picks up the umbrella and walks off along the platform. This is said by the don who is blind. What he doesn't say, but I'm sure happens, is that the thin man swings the umbrella as if it's his own. Now, say the two dons, your turn. Is this theft? It's a trick question, surely. He's half-inched it. He's probably already working out how to sell it down Rathbone Market, like those starchy sheets someone in the family caught as they dropped off the back of a lorry, the ones we all smoothed over our mattresses. So I say, yes, it's theft. The older Don looks glum. He wants to fill this year with girls, adds a supplementary. But what if to exit the station, he says like it matters, the man will have to walk past the station master's office? And I'm back in boots, secreting blue eyeshadow and Rimmel mascara in my pocket and putting it back on the shelves after 10 minutes, just for the hell of it, remembering what Carol said, it's only stealing if you've left the premises. So I look the Don in the eye, the one who isn't blind, and I say, it depends, like I'm an authority. It depends, of course, on what the thin man intends. And they smile in bearded unison, and it's a life-changing moment, a moment causally linked to 5 births, a divorce, 4 weddings. But all the way back to the bricks and mortar station, to the train that will take me to Paddington, I want to say, of course he was nicking it. Didn't you see the state of his shoes? Didn't you see the ditches round his eyes? Have you forgotten there was only fluff in his wallet? And I want to ask, why are there only men in the story? Where are the women? Until I remember that none of it is real, that what I've applied to read is law, not imagination. Derek Mahon wrote a famous and fabulous poem entitled Everything is Going to Be All Right, which I think gave many people hope during the pandemic. My next poem is a response. I do think of myself as a positive person, but also questioning, doubtful, fearful, particularly in my role as mother. This sonnet comes from that place. Come night, and why would I not wish, after a drawful of days disarrayed with worry, to walk into dusk's byways, leaving the back gate unlatched? Come night, I'll say, lead me away from the probing kitchen light, where fear simmers blood orange like a dying sun, and all the talk is of treatment not yet begun. Race me across the cropped grass until my mind is infused with black, the future set free, undefined. Somewhere in the forest a badger leaves the set to forage for her cubs. Inside, a child learns the alphabet, his small hand feeding the page with words. I stand with my back to the door, knowing in spite of everything, a mother never loses the urge to run, for who can tell if everything will be all right? My next poem was an early poem. It comes from my angry phase, a landscape of betrayal, a landscape jostled with some reasonable and some really awful poems. I hope this is a good one. I still enjoy reading it. But just to say, Clissold Park, which I feel gets a bad press in the poem, is a park in North London where I spent many happy hours with my daughter Alice and her son Theo when he was a baby. The morning after a lie was born. When we set off for Clissold Park one stainless Sunday morning, the lie, I know this now, was just newborn. You'd birthed him as the full fat moon spurted light into a borrowed bedroom, then washed his dangling limbs in whiskey fumes and semen. Swaddled, you brought him home at midnight. He lay between us till the rooster cried, a red-eyed laboratory rat intent on getting fat on rancid milk. His mouth froth stopped. After I'd made you bacon and egg, you slapped the drooling lie into the top pocket of your new-bought Barber jacket. Said you'd had enough of questions, when would I start believing? While the lie took a nap, we walked beside the pond, threw burnt toast to the solitary swan, whose whooping woke the lie, grown too leggy already for the pouch in which you'd trust him. He dropped at your feet, began wailing. I really enjoy writing ekphrastic poetry that responds to art. Trying to find that space in a painting where I can drop through and experience my own colour and scenery. This poem responds to a painting by René Magritte called The Month of the Grape Harvest. Argument. The men in bowler hats are looking through my open window, rows of them, massed like unlit matches, suited and unsmiling. There are too many eyes for me to meet, iron eyes that wait for an apology. My room is blue, even the skirting board. Even my point of view, grown too big for my face, is blue, like a forget-me-not or the beginnings of a bruise. Blue, I read yesterday, is not the colour of compromise. The men are still waiting. All their closed lips are ready to bite into my excuses. They are wearing your ties, knotted like the veins of our conversations. If I blink, they will leap into my skin, line up round the walls while they decide what tint to paint my opinions. For many years, I didn't suffer big losses. There were none that caused any subsidence until my early 50s. I've given away my age. Then there were a few. I think of them as the roots of something like a eucalyptus tree finally reaching into my life enough to give it a violent shake. I learnt how loss can cause a life to stall altogether for a while. Later, some years later, I realised that loss, like everything really, is not one-dimensional. This poem, which references a poem by Elizabeth Bishop called The Art of Losing, is my response to that. The personality of loss. The poets are having a competition to see who can write best about loss. But since loss has many expressions, they start by sitting in the shade of an apple tree, whose crimson blossoms never come to anything these days, to decide what is the personality of loss. She crosses her ankles, says true loss never makes her cry. It drills boreholes into the heart, only to fill the cavities with cement. He blinks, turns away, says loss can only ever be weighed in tears, tears that scour riverbeds into cheeks before falling like diamonds into the Dead Sea. As a blackbird slowly pecks at the bark, she says loss needs to have gravitas. Elizabeth was right. Who cares about keys, names, even houses with front doors painted in a shade called borrowed light? He butts in, says it's like that bit in the Bible about every grain of sand being precious. Each loss is an ember ready to leap out of the grate onto the rag rug and burn the house down. She leans back, looks at the waiting sky, says loss must be incapable of being forgotten. In fact, more than that, it must alter the loser forever. Not like a change in perspective, more like the amputation of a finger or a leg. He says, maybe, although if she's right, there's not much of him left. Is it possible, she asks, closing both eyes, that loss is beautiful? Since they can't agree, they stop talking for a while, lie back, and watch the petals fall like blood-tinged snow on the grass. Before I close, I must thank Rishi and Jane to be edited, and I do feel as if it has been me, not just my poems, that has been edited by two such wonderful, talented poets was a joy. I've learnt loads. I want to learn more. It's also a huge privilege to have my work on the same sofa as Kym's and Fathima's. There's a long list of other thanks at the back of Primer 6. I'm indebted to so many people and poets across the planet. My ever-encouraging husband, Jonathan, who is here, my children, my sister, my nieces. 2 weeks ago, we lost one of those names, my father-in-law, Ivan, 94 years old, an artist, musician, a man of the potteries who welcomed me as a late arrival into his family and always asked how my poetry was coming along. I'd like to dedicate this last poem to him. The End of the Ice Age. How long I was buried, I will never know. Your weight, cold, exclusive, a great sheet I couldn't lift, pinioned me. So thick, I forgot the meaning of light, how my surface might be altered by its touch. It is true, I gave up hope. It was as if I were Eve, returned to rib, crushed in your chest, but you made of ice, not flesh. Then it came to an end. You left me, scoured, hollow, bits of you, sand and gravel, deposited in my memory. Alone, I exulted in your absence, my basin virgin again, earthy, expectant, offering its stones to the meltwater. I was happy to be exposed, for seed to warm in my crust. It did not matter if the sun kept in shadow what came next. Thank you.
Thank you, Estelle. And now to introduce Fathima Zahra, an Indian poet and performer based in London. Her poems have won the Bridport Prize, the Wells Fest Young Poets Prize and the Asia House Poetry Slam. She has performed at festivals across the UK, including Hay, Latitude and Verve. Her debut pamphlet, Sargam Swagam, from Ignition Press, was selected for the Poetry Book Society Pamphlet Choice. Other people, as well as myself and Jane, have noted the talent that is there already. And you will hear as well some work that is brilliantly simple in how it first appears on the surface, but there's a hell of a lot going on underneath as well. I was especially captured by the really cunning wit that's there, and there are some absolutely sharp images that hung around for a long time after first being read. And when combined, these poems really showcase the difficulty of fitting in, wherever that in might be, and the strength that comes from not doing so as well. And this voice it's unique and it's illuminating, and it also does something of bringing a spotlight to the distinctive closeness of girlhood and womanhood's conversations. And there are secrets being revealed here within these really precise lines. Please give it up for Fathima.
Hello, everyone. It is such a joy and honor to be reading today and to be published in this anthology alongside Kym and Estelle. The conversations as well as the editing sessions with Jane and Rishi over the past year has been such a joy in what's been personally a chaotic year. His first poem is called Metamorphosis. Asshole. What an asshole. You roll the words in your mouth like hard candy, cuss out the senior who called you a double-crossing bitch. Here, in the back of the madrasa van where Ummah's glare when sent your tongue cowering. Your friend and you, I, the junior with the red lips the boys whisper about. In the dark of your bedroom, you hold a shaking brush to your face, plunge your hands into the mouth of the makeup pouch, come up with a new spell, raise a pair of scissors to your hair already short and suffering. You are trying to summon the face of a sweeter girl, or sexier, you don't know it yet. When you step out, something has shifted under the abaya. Uma can't keep track of what to pull your leg about, what ledges to talk you down from, which boy to not lose sleep over. A lot of these poems were written or developed during the early lockdown and the pandemic, where kind of as a means of coping, I suppose, with the wider news of loss and grief, as well as personal news in the family. I was mostly returning to memories from my childhood, some more pleasant than the others. And this first one is for a memorable teacher from my year one. Mrs. T. Answers well up and stay stuck in my throat in Mrs. T's class. The Hindi teacher with a mole on her face and red cheeks growing redder when we mumble. Wooden ruler, a ready whip in her hands, beating to purge the I don't knows from our soft bellies. I was once spared a slap. She smiled as if this was a kindness. At the parents-teachers' evening, there's a queue of frowns snaking out of her classroom. Mrs. T is wearing a sari that looks like an oil painting, her face made up as she croons sweetly. What do you mean? Someone says she lost her husband that year. Uma says she can go to hell. Venom, venom, venom. My tongue feels out the gap where the shaky teeth once stood. In the mirror, I wince at the girl with the cropped hair and open windows in her mouth. I want Papa to buy me all the sandwich ice creams from the corner shop. I want to watch Pink Panther and skip school unless it's my birthday. I want to stay in nursery and be called Princess still. I want for my cheese sandwiches to be cut into triangles, to play with my sister, but she can't go on the PlayStation yet. I want Uma to linger at the door when I'm sick. I want to go to the hairdressers like the other girls in my class. I want the new skating shoes with the blinking lights. I want my old bed to not lose any more teeth, to keep blowing candles off everyone else's cake. Culling. For my first day at the madrasa, I wear my new floral top, pack scraps of surahs I've learned in the passing. They curdle in my mouth and teachers raise my name in anger, strike my palms for each word stumbled like I drag nails down God's throne itself. I'm asked to be dressed for prayer, always. The further they send their hands down my throat, the more limbs I sprout in the dark soil. They speak of hells and girls who don't cover up in the same breath, and I forget of the world's softness beyond their claws. I spent a lot of last year reading about mother-daughter relationships, and I kept coming across the myth of Persephone. And more than anything, I was drawn to the relationship between Persephone and Demeter. And I couldn't stop wondering what that would have been like from the perspective of women that I grew up with, how they would cope with losing a daughter or being hopeful, and what that would look like. And this is the first of a sequence. It's called Demeter Speaks. I haven't made dumplings for your brother since you've been gone. I pretend to iron clothes. Wonder what you must be doing this minute. I don't know my hands without yours tugging at it. I never wanted kids, but I've made a life of wheedling dough into animal faces for you. They're asking me to move on, to remember the children I do have. I'd rather hear the banging of the door as you storm out to your room, the careless laughter when your friends are over, names of boys I catch in conversations. I see them now, hands linked, as they walk to the market. It takes me a second before I remember your empty chair at the dinner table. Pass. Boys are passing girls apples under the desk. It's the art of quick hands, the timed glance. There are bets on who, when, what kind of apple. At house parties, my friends and I recreate the latest exchange, sit across each other on our bedroom floors, giggle while my friends chant, "Go on then. Did you hear about the boy who hoarded apples? The girl with the butterfingers?" Our parents held outside by the guise of a locked door and code words and text. Crackling voices of boyfriends saved under Aisha's and Fathima's. I too am waiting for my glossy apple. I have perfected the receiving palm, a Cosmo masterclass. I don't care if he catches my eye, if he remembers my name, if he whistles after like on the field, ears cocked for applause. Smaller hells. When I ask if the curry's hot, try some, Mom goads. Like she didn't shriek when the iron branded little moons on my palms. She ironed my clothes for the next 3 years. Once, after dinner, the room still hazy with nostalgia and stale laughter, Mum's eyes bulged before her gasp, the smell of hair singeing, a forgotten candle. She held my sister until she fell asleep crying, not about the lock of burnt hair, but what could have been. We'd grown stepping around preordained fires. I don't carry a matchbox like Muhammad Ali did, but my madrasa teachers summoned and named these fires each lesson, for hairs peeking out scarves, bared shoulders, a dirty joke. The fire dies down in my eyes with each warning. I outgrow those wooden benches, learn to lie and kiss with my eyes closed. This last poem is for all the eldest daughters out there who I think is the backbone of the family and who my sister reminds me deserve to be taken down a notch sometimes. The committee of eldest daughters meet once a month if they can. When they aren't translating birdsong or writing letters of recommendations for the committee of wavering sons, the black sheep, a kind benefactor hears of them, sends a lifetime supply of bath bombs and essential oils. No one's got time for love. They remind each other to dress warm for the weather and take their sleeping pills. They remember the moment their mother's love for them ran short. Somewhere, an eldest daughter is crumbling in her childhood bedroom, and the aunts come to feast. There's always a lover outside the bedroom door, fist hovering, pre-knock. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to our wonderful readers. We are so proud of you, Kym, Estelle, Fathima. It reminds me as well of the power of being in the room or being on the live stream indeed, to hear the poetry. One thing that I've really missed as an editor, and I'm sure Rishi has found this also, is the joyous moment when you hear the poem from the poet. It's just wonderful. It's like that little missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle, and the whole thing lights up. What a delight to hear your amazing readings. Could we please have another round of applause for our brilliant poets, for Kym Deyn, for Estelle Price, for Fathima Zahra, and also for our co-editor Rishi Dastidar as well. The unique thing about primers is that it's a process not just of being published, but of mentoring. And I should say the period of time that Rishi has spent working with each poet, getting to know their work, getting to take it apart. So you've got all the little moving parts laid out, and then looking at how it's all working, and working with each poet to then reassemble and polish and get each poem into its new form, into its final form. That has been such a wonderful process for me to witness, and for then to have the conversation with the poets as well as we put together the book, and to be here today. Congratulations, it's such a wonderful thing, and we are delighted to have had this launch as part of SkyLines. It only remains for me really to say thank you very much for coming to this wonderful event. Thank you to our supporters, to the Arts Council England for their funding, to the Belgrade Theatre and our brilliant tech team here who've been supporting our events, to our live stream team as well, who are making sure that people can connect with this event wherever they are. Can we have a round of applause? And thank you very much for coming.